the heart of Birmingham stood a megachurch that drew thousands every weekend. At its helm was Reverend Michael Thompson, a man revered not only for his fiery sermons but for his charismatic presence and polished charm. People travelled from across the UK to hear him speak, claiming his voice carried divine authority. Women wept at the altar, men knelt in repentance, and the media hailed him as a spiritual icon. But Reverend Thompson was not the saintly figure he appeared to be. Beneath the surface of designer suits, televised blessings, and grand donations lay a man driven by ego and desire. The church staff whispered of closed-door meetings and late-night calls. Still, no one dared question the man of God. To the public, he was untouchable, a moral compass in a world gone mad. But behind the pulpit, Reverend Thompson's secrets festered like rot beneath a painted wall. Linda Williams had grown up in East London, the eldest of three, with dreams that faded as quickly as the bills piled up. Her mother was bedridden, her brother in and out of trouble, and the job market hadn't been kind. When she saw the vacancy for a personal assistant to Reverend Thompson at Grace Assembly Church, it felt like a godsend: stable pay, local hours, and a chance to escape the cycle. She applied with a crisp CV, a borrowed blouse, and a prayer on her lips. But behind her nervous smile was a truth she dared not share. Linda was HIV-positive. Diagnosed 2 years earlier after a reckless relationship, she'd kept it secret, carrying the weight alone. The fear of rejection followed her everywhere. Still, she needed this job. She told herself the past wouldn't matter. But deep down, she knew some truths don't stay buried forever. At first, Linda thought she had found a safe haven at Grace Assembly Church. Pastor Daniel Thompson, charismatic and well-spoken, appeared to be the pillar of the community, a man of faith and integrity. But it didn't take long for the cracks to begin showing. At first, it was subtle, an innocent compliment here and there about her smile or the way she dressed. But soon, the remarks grew more personal, more intrusive. Linda would catch him staring at her a little too long, the comments laced with double meanings. "You look beautiful today, Linda. Such a shame you're so modest," he'd say, his voice lingering a little too much on the word modest. She laughed nervously, brushing it off, but the discomfort began to build. What had started as a professional relationship was now becoming something darker, something she wasn't sure how to handle. As weeks went by, Linda's unease grew, but so did Pastor Daniel's advances. One afternoon, as they were alone in the church office, the atmosphere shifted. He closed the door behind him, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "Linda," he began, his tone laced with an unsettling confidence, "you know how much I value your work here, don't you?" His voice was smooth, almost coaxing, yet there was something dangerous lurking beneath the surface. "But sometimes, people need to prove their loyalty, don't they?" The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Linda's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what he was suggesting, but the pressure to keep her job clouded her judgment. The thought of losing the security of this position, her only source of income, made her hesitate. Was her future here really worth compromising everything she stood for? Linda's refusal to bow to Pastor Daniel's advances came at a heavy cost. The next morning, as she sat in her small office, she was called to his private study. The air felt thick with tension as she entered, her palms clammy with anxiety. Without preamble, Pastor Daniel's cold gaze met hers. "Linda, I'm disappointed," he said, his voice stripped of the charm it once held. "I thought you'd understand the sacrifices required to work here." He slid an envelope across the desk. "Consider this your severance," he added, his tone dismissive. "Pack up. You're no longer needed." The words hit like a slap. Humiliated and in disbelief, Linda felt a rush of emotions: anger, frustration, and a deep sense of betrayal. With her financial stability in ruins, she left the office, her dreams shattered. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a far darker plan unfolding. Linda returned to the church, her steps deliberate and calm. To any onlookers, she was just another defeated woman, the shame of her dismissal still fresh on her face. But inside, a fire burned. She had a plan now, a plan that would expose Pastor Daniel for what he truly was. She kept her head down, pretending to be compliant, to have accepted her fate. The months of humiliation, the insults, the sexual advances all had led her to this moment. She knew the power of secrecy and manipulation, and now she would wield it against him. With calculated precision, Linda made herself available to Pastor Daniel once again, offering him a veneer of submission. Her every move was designed to draw him in closer, to make him believe that he had the upper hand. But in reality, she was carefully setting the trap that would bring him down. Linda's decision was final. She agreed to the affair, but not out of desire or weakness. This was all part of her calculated revenge. Every touch, every word exchanged with Pastor Daniel was now part of her strategy. She played the part of the willing, obedient woman, all the while recording their encounters. She never revealed her secret to him, the truth that she carried the burden of HIV, a truth that could change everything. It was her weapon now, and she would keep it hidden until the right moment. The pastor, intoxicated by his own sense of power, had no idea what was lurking beneath Linda's outward submission. Each encounter became a delicate game of manipulation, as Linda stayed one step ahead. She knew the risk she was taking, but she also knew the weight of justice would fall upon Pastor Daniel when the time came. Pastor Daniel's health began to decline rapidly. What started as subtle fatigue soon spiraled into something much worse: persistent fever, unexplained weight loss, and a general weakness that could no longer be ignored. The once vibrant and commanding figure now seemed fragile, his strength eroding with each passing day. His wife, Grace, deeply concerned yet unaware of the true cause, began to question the sudden change. As his condition worsened, Grace grew suspicious. She'd noticed his erratic behavior, the long hours away from home, and the tension in their marriage. Something wasn't right. Driven by a need for answers, she began to quietly investigate. She dug into the church's affairs, looking for any clues, and soon uncovered disturbing whispers about her husband's recent interactions with Linda. Unwilling to confront him just yet, Grace decided to investigate further, hoping to piece together the full picture before making a devastating discovery. Determined to uncover the truth, Grace took matters into her own hands. She hired a private investigator, someone discreet but skilled at getting to the bottom of things. Weeks went by, and Grace's anxiety grew as she waited for answers, her suspicions gnawing at her every moment. The investigator, however, delivered the devastating evidence she feared. In a hidden folder, Grace found photographic proof of her husband's betrayal. The images were clear. Daniel, once a man of integrity in the eyes of his congregation, was in compromising positions with Linda. The affair wasn't just a passing moment, it had been ongoing. The photos showed them together at various locations, their intimacy undeniable. The realization hit Grace like a thunderbolt. Her world, built on faith and trust, crumbled in an instant. Her husband, the revered pastor, had not only lied to her but had also betrayed everything they had built together. In a panic, Pastor Daniel's paranoia reached its peak. He filed a police report, accusing Linda of intentionally infecting him with HIV. His once unshakable confidence turned to fear as he scrambled to protect his reputation and shift the blame onto her. He painted Linda as a vengeful woman, a schemer who had used their affair as a weapon against him. The police, unable to ignore the severity of the accusation, arrested Linda. They came to her flat one morning, the sound of knocking sharp against the quiet. In disbelief, Linda was dragged out of her home, her dignity stripped away by a cruel twist of fate. As she sat in the back of the police car, Linda felt a mixture of anger and helplessness. The pastor, the man who had abused his power, was now playing the victim. The tables had turned, but the fight for justice had only just begun. The courtroom erupted with tension as Linda, resolute and prepared, stood before the judge. The air was thick with anticipation, every eye fixed on the unfolding battle for truth. Linda's defense team meticulously presented a damning array of evidence, recordings of Pastor Daniel's inappropriate advances, text messages that confirmed his predatory behavior, and testimonies from other women who had fallen victim to his manipulation. Each piece of evidence hit harder than the last, exposing the pastor's dark side to a room that had previously admired him. Linda's voice shook with determination, the weight of her fight for justice evident in every word. Pastor Daniel, once confident, now sat in stunned silence, his smug facade crumbling with each revelation. The prosecution presented the pastor as a man who had abused his power, while Linda emerged as the voice of the silenced victims. The courtroom had become a war zone, and Linda was ready to fight. The judge's gavel echoed in the silent courtroom, signaling the verdict. Linda stood tall, her heart racing, as the words "not guilty" reverberated through the room. Relief washed over her, but it was bittersweet. The battle had cost her so much, and while justice had prevailed, the scars would never fade. Pastor Daniel, once a pillar of the community, was left broken. His reputation, his ministry, his wealth, all of it crumbled in an instant. The truth had been exposed, but the consequences of his actions were far-reaching. No one was untouched by the revelation, not even those who had once blindly followed him. As Linda left the courtroom, she knew this victory wasn't just for her. It was for every victim silenced in the shadows, for every woman whose voice had been muffled by fear. Justice had been delivered, but the road to healing was just beginning.